turn it over to Chuck O'Neill. I think y'all will recognize him as, he wears many hats, and he is a coordinator of the clearinghouse and will be coordinating the Cornell Cooperative Extension education and outreach, invasive species education outreach under contract with the state when it finally happens. He is with Sea Grant. I believe he's the associate director. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chuck.
Interim.
And he also has served on the National Invasive Species Advisory Council and is currently on New York's Invasive Species Advisory Committee. And I'm sure I've missed some of his credentials, but at this point I'd like to hand it over to Chuck for his presentation on evaluating education outreach efforts.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. What I'm doing is I'm basing this presentation on one that Mike Duttweiler from Cornell Cooperative Extension gave back at the November in-service. Mike is the evaluation guru at Extension, so I figured I couldn't improve on a perfect presentation. So we'll use that one. Pretty soon it will be up on the Clearinghouse website. Some of the questions that people ask when we first talk about evaluating programs is, why should we evaluate a program? And generally, when you're looking at evaluation, the first thing you want to do is decide what to do. Identify what your needs are for outreach and what kind of opportunities you have. This will help guide you toward where you're going to be doing evaluation. Identify what your PRISM partners' resources are, both for the program that you're going to be undertaking and for participating in doing the evaluations. Why evaluate? The main reason is to find out if you're having an impact and then be able to improve what you do, to be able to make sure that the next program that you run or the next program that one of your partners runs on invasive species is going to be even better than the last one. Find the things that the audiences thought worked well and use those. Find things that the audiences didn't think worked all that much and try to improve those. You may want to be able to use it to decide whether you're going to actually keep evaluating, if it's serving your needs or if it's not serving your needs, if you have the resources to do it, or if at this point you don't have the resources to do it. And also, it helps you decide whether you're going to keep doing the kind of programming that you're doing. And if you don't have the resources to do the program, the evaluation will help tell you that by what the outcomes are with the audiences. And it makes the case, or helps make the case, for what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. It provides you with a way of documenting the workshop or the weed walk or whatever it is that you did. And if you've got partners who may be a little bit skeptical, or funders or outside organizations that periodically work with you or maybe considering joining the PRISM, it helps answer the question that they might be asking, and that would be, so what? Why did you do this? Why did you want our money? Why did you want our time? Why did you bring all these people into the activity? So it answers a lot of questions that may come up in a more structured manner, so that you're not just sort of grabbing them out of the cloud. There's a number of keys, though, to doing a successful evaluation, and a lot of what I'm going to give you today is just brushing the top of it. In the future, what we hope to do once we get the statewide program going is be able to offer regional evaluation trainings and program planning trainings to PRISMs across the state. An effective evaluation starts right out with knowing how the program that you're going to run is expected to work. You need to know that ahead of time. It's not something that you can just jump into, and if you know that, then you have a pretty good idea of what you're going to be able to evaluate as you move forward. It gives you an opportunity to really clarify why you're doing the evaluation. Are you doing it to make a decision for your own organization on, are we going to do these again? Should we do something different? How are we going to do them? You may be evaluating to put it into a report to a funder. You may use it for later decision making, and I hope that if you did an evaluation, that it would be something that you would use later on to make further decisions. It allows you to continuously improve the kinds of programs that you're delivering, and if you're doing the evaluations as you move forward, it's something that you'll be able to identify audience needs based on what they're telling you about the programs they've already attended. You don't want to try and do too much with an evaluation, though. If you have too many things you're trying to evaluate, A, your audience is probably not going to play along with you and take the time to give you the answers to all the questions. And if you ask too many questions, you yourself may have too many things and not enough information on any of them. So what you want to do is look at the program you're going to be running, look at a couple real key questions that you want answered about that program, and then evaluate those, move forward with those. When you're designing an evaluation, the first thing you want to look at is what are the outcomes of the program. You're doing the program for a reason, and you want to have certain outcomes. This gives you an opportunity to really focus down and say, what is it that we're doing this program for? What are the outcomes that we want to see our audience be able to go away from this activity with? So not only is it going to help you evaluate the program, it's actually going to help you plan the program even before you get into the idea of evaluating it. It gives you an opportunity to really look at how that program is going to work. How are you going to reach those outcomes with the audience? And it gives you the opportunity to be able to describe how the program is going to work to your partners, to your funders, to the audience when you're putting out your notifications and publicity on the upcoming activity. You're looking at it along the lines of, okay, if we're planning this activity, we're going to do a range of things as part of that activity. And if we do this, what's the audience going to do? Are they going to do that or something else? The results of whatever they do are going to be what? Not only what do you think you want done, but what do you think the audience is actually going to do? Are they just going to learn something, or are they going to go out and make giant puppets and put them on a train car going up the Hudson River line, something like that? Where are you heading with this, and why are you doing it? There's a lot of barriers to evaluation that prevent quite a few of us from doing them probably as often as we should, and that's the press of time. Something comes up, you find a Japanese knotweed infestation or water chestnut infestation or Asian longhorn beetles where they didn't show up before, and you've got to respond to it really quickly. And a lot of times the idea of evaluation gets lost in that press of time of trying to respond to a very short-term activity. A lot of people look at it and say, well, you know, we've got the real work of doing this activity. That's really what we're here all about. We'll do the evaluation separate from it, or that's just a minor part of it. And they try and separate the two rather than actually looking at the evaluation as part of the real work, which helps you accomplish that and accomplish more real work in the future. Some folks, when they're doing evaluation, may just look at the evaluation itself as an end game. Well, we were asked to do an evaluation for the funders, so we'll just do the evaluation. We'll write it up, we'll put it in the report when we say that we spent the money, and that's the end of it. They don't use it to fine-tune future planning and to feed into future planning. It's an end in itself. And that, when you start doing that, the evaluation doesn't mean much to you. It just is something that's taking up your time. One of the typical barriers is limited experience. A lot of people have never done evaluations, or at least formal evaluations, and they don't really have the tools, the skills, and the knowledge to do an evaluation. And even those of us in Extension who, back in the old days, were taught evaluation as part of becoming a new Extension agent, a lot of times don't do evaluations anymore because of everything just up above that. You know, we don't have time, we're doing too many things, we don't have the resources to do it, or we have just gotten downright lazy. People who've never done them, though, it's even harder to get into it. And that's why hopefully once we get the state contract, one of the things we'll be able to do, if the PRISMs feel that it's needed and would be useful to them, is to be able to set up half-day or whole-day sessions on program planning and development and evaluation and how to use it. It can be really scary. First off, if you've never done an evaluation before, just putting it together and trying to figure out what it is you want to evaluate and what you're going to do with it can be scary. But it can be scary from the viewpoint of, oh my goodness, what happens if we do an evaluation of this program and we find out that people hated it, or we find out that nobody used it, or we find out that people thought, you know, why did they even bother doing this, those types of things. So if you go into it with that kind of a mindset, it can be darn scary. But even if you find out those types of things, even if you find out from folks that, boy, this really didn't do what we thought it was going to do, why did we spend this Saturday morning doing it, it helps you do your next program so that that doesn't happen again. And it helps you be able to tailor the programs so that when you do them, people walk away from it with a much better feeling for what they're going to do afterwards. And in a lot of cases, evaluation just doesn't carry any value with it. People don't look at it as being something that is part of the real work, that it's something that just gets done and doesn't get used later, so why take the time and the effort and the resources to do an evaluation? There's a whole hierarchy of types or forms of evaluation. And as we go down through this, we're looking at ones that start out with very little effort, very little resources necessary to do them. And that first one, casual observation, basically you're doing the program. You're out doing whatever the activity is, running the program, and you're paying attention to how your audience is responding to what's being done, to the materials they're receiving, to the training they're receiving, just basically to what's going on around you and if people seem to be getting it. The next step up would be voluntary anecdotes. That's when Joe Smith walks over to you and says, wow, this is great. I never knew about this. Or we wouldn't have thought we could get rid of that patch of Trappa that easily, or, you know, we never knew how to do it at all. So these are the folks who are just walking over to you and letting you know how things went, or who are walking over to you and saying, you know, this could have been done in 2 hours instead of 3 hours. Postmortems, a little bit farther up the scale. This is where the people who are involved in the program and the planning of the program, the development of the program, the delivery of it, have an opportunity to discuss among themselves how they thought it went. It also can include, however, at the end of the meeting, as the people are leaving the meeting, actually going over, talking to people, listening to people, making that kind of one-on-one, immediate discussions of the meeting while it's still fresh in everybody's mind. That's all part of the immediate feedback, not waiting weeks to find out what went on, but you've got the educable moment because you just did the workshop. Now you've got the opportunity to actually find out what people thought of it before they get in their cars and head back home. Opportunistic follow-up. This is where, in the back of your mind, you know that you still have information you want to find out, but you don't really have the time or the staff or whatever to do a formal follow-up of it, but you're out at another meeting and you meet with a couple people who had been at the previous workshop that you had run. Over coffee, you ask them, how did it work? Do you think it went well? What are you doing with the information? Has it helped you? You're on a telephone conversation with somebody and you throw in a question or two about, gee, you know, I saw you at the meeting last week. What did you get out of that? Now, the next two are taking it a step further. This might be if you have a really major program that you're doing and that you really want information on. Most usually, though, these are things that people are doing when they're actually doing research on the programs that are being done. And that's a systematic follow-up. Basically, this could be something like having someone or someone's volunteers from your group or partners having a list of questions and actually calling people who had attended up and going through that list of questions and finding out, was the meeting run well? Did you learn what you thought you were going to learn? Have you used that? But doing it in a systematic way, not haphazard, not opportunistically. And if you want to go the whole route, then you do one of the scientific evaluations, and you've probably all been part of one of these where you get told you're going to be evaluated. Here's one you can take home with you. You get a mailing. Here's this 15-page evaluation. Please fill it out and send it back to us in 3 weeks. Then you get a postcard that says, we sent you this evaluation. If you haven't sent it back, please send it back. And then you get, a couple weeks later, another copy of that evaluation. Very seldom done unless it's a really big program with a lot of resources going into it, or if you're really, really going to use that evaluation for another big program. But I don't think we're going to see that done very much by PRISMs and around a lot of the work we're doing. When you're planning your evaluation, it's pretty much the same as when, excuse me, as when you're planning the program itself. And step one isn't just doing it on your own, thinking that you know what the stakeholders want to learn and thinking about what you want to ask them about what they learned, but you really want to involve the stakeholders right from the get-go, both in the program planning and in planning the evaluation of that program. That helps you determine a couple things. It helps you determine the information needs of the audience that you're doing the activity or the program for, but it also helps you figure out what kinds of things do you want to get back from the people who participate as far as the information needs that they have. Because when you start doing programs, invariably there are going to be things that you don't touch on because you simply don't know what level of interest they have, what level of knowledge of the program they have, and this gives you an opportunity to plan into the meeting ways of finding those information needs and what types of questions you're going to ask afterwards to see if you met those information needs. Data gathering, that's everything that we talked about earlier, from watching how the meeting is going to listening to comments that participants are making to each other or to you, to doing the follow-up type evaluation activities. If you want to go a step further, you could actually have a pre-meeting or a pre-activity survey that you would hand out before people got going on things, keeping that very, very short so that you don't turn them off with it, but it gives you an idea of seeing what their level of knowledge was before the activity started, so you can evaluate whether what you did actually changed that. But that's all part of the idea of gathering the data for both what you're going to be doing and what you've done. Then you've got to look at all of that and try and figure it out. Did this actually help the meeting? Can we do it better in the future? Did we just do a dynamite meeting that everybody thought was the best thing since sliced bread? And really taking a good close look at it. And this is the part that can be pretty scary sometimes and can be a little bit time consuming, but you really need to find out, what does this information you gathered mean to your programs and to your future programs? And then applying that, using it to plan your future programs. And we're all going to be doing more programs, and I'm hoping once the state funding hits the PRISMs, we're going to see the PRISMs doing even more programs. So this gives you an opportunity to really apply that to the future programs so you can bring in more people, better programs, more of an impact from what you do. And then it feeds right back into the feedback loop for when you're planning your next opportunity for your education. A very good way of looking at evaluations of programs is to look at what people do with the information. It's a level of evidence. Bennett did a lot of work on it. Bennett's hierarchy of evidence. as we look at the pyramid going up, from the bottom up, the amount of time and effort that goes into the evaluation is going to be increasing. And in the beginning, you're looking at the implementation of the program and not so much after the program. So you're looking at the inputs. What's it going to take to do this program? And later on, evaluation is going to tell you if you did enough for the program and if you had enough inputs or what inputs you might have missed. The activities when you're planning the program. What methods are you going to use to deliver the education that you want to deliver? How are you going to reach out to the audiences to get them to the activity? How are you going to be able to put together the types of handouts or PowerPoint presentations or in-the-field demonstrations? Who are you going to involve? How many of you are going to be able to come? Is it something that's wide open and everyone that can get there is welcome? Or are you going to have to limit that? And how do you figure out who it is that your main target audience is? Who's involved in planning it? Who's involved in presenting? Who's involved in evaluating how it worked later on? Now we're getting into actually looking at what happens at the educational activity or program that you run, and that initial reaction of the folks who are there, your audience satisfaction basically. Do they look happy with what they're doing? Do they look like they're actually learning something? Do they look bored? Do they look like they're going home feeling that they just spent time well? The impacts of the program, CASA, which is quite a ways up on the list, which stands for knowledge, attitude, skills, and aspirations. Have people learned anything? Are they going away from the educational program with a knowledge that they didn't have before they came? Have you changed their attitude? Has someone thought, gee, you know, maybe I shouldn't be transporting firewood from the Catskills to the Adirondacks when I go fishing up there? Have you given them the information to go home with a new skill for preventing transport of invasive species or for controlling ones that they've got in their own area or something like that? And what are their aspirations? Do they go home fired up to prevent the transport of invasive species? Do they have a feeling now that invasive species are really important and that they can be part of the solution? So this is things that they may be leaving the meeting with, not necessarily things that they're doing, but this is some of the tools that they've learned from you, hopefully, that they're now leaving with. Taking that a step up, though, it's one thing to have knowledge or it's one thing to have a different attitude, but when you get home and 2 weeks later, do you actually change what you're doing? Is there a practice change? Do you stop transporting that firewood? Those sorts of things. And right up at the top is an end result. Do you see your audience doing things that are resulting in what you did the program for? If you can get it up to that level, you know you've done a really good program. If it doesn't get up that far and you've got information from the audience on why it didn't, then it gives you an opportunity for your next program to be able to push it that next step instead of just learning about something, learning how to do a change and actually going home and making a change. Different levels of evaluation. You can document things. What kinds of resources did you use? How did you do it? What products were developed for the workshop? Who participated in planning it and developing it and implementing it? Who participated in coming as the audience to that workshop? All things that are going to be useful for you in the future. That immediate feedback, the satisfaction of the audience, where they are on the CASA scale. But again, this is during the meeting, during the workshop, and immediately as people are leaving. So that's immediate feedback. That really helps you fine-tune the actual delivery of the next meeting, possibly, maybe not the content of it. And then that follow-up evaluation that you do, this is where you can find out if people have actually changed how they're doing something. Did the information you gave them make a change in something that the audience is doing? and it helps you identify if that audience has continuing needs along the same line, or if there are new invasive species things that they would like to learn about or need to learn about, and what kinds of opportunities do they want to look forward to. Do they want another 2-hour meeting in the evening, or do they want an opportunity on a Saturday to actually go out, see some invasive species, learn what they look like, how to identify them, and how to control them and manage them, those sorts of things. There are a number of ways of gathering that kind of information. You can do surveys. You can look at some limited slices of your audience and actually do case studies. What did you do before you came? What did you learn? How did you take it home? And find out everything about how they did it. Interviews, whether it's right at the activity itself or those follow-up telephone calls that help. Direct observation, all these same types of things that are happening. People like to talk about things. They like to give testimonials. Boy, if they went home and they were able to get rid of Japanese knotweed on their property, next time they see you, they're very likely to tell you that and tell you a story about what they've done. That's something very important for you to know later on. Gives you an opportunity to take photographs of what's going on or videos of the activities. Or perhaps even going out with part of your audience later on and getting photos of them using the information that you've imparted to them. But there's a whole range of ways of gathering the data that you're going to use. And getting on here at the end, it's building evaluation into all of your planning and into all of your program development and the way that you look at things. Part of doing this is figuring out whose priority is the evaluation. Is it your priority to do the evaluation because you want to know how you did and you want to know what you can do to do better programs? Is it the need of other stakeholders, folks that worked with you that need the information, or a funding entity that you want to go back to and say, here's the kind of impact that we've had? It gives you an opportunity to really clarify the questions that you're asking. The first couple times you may not be hitting the target, but if you build that into all of your programs, eventually you'll really know what it is you want to look into. In the way of tapping other data, as you do each program, you've got data in the past from evaluating the others, and that gives you a bank of data that you can draw on. If another PRISM did a similar program, did they evaluate it? What did they find out? If one of your partners did a program by themselves, and evaluated it or found out later how it worked. It's all other information that you can draw into your type of programs. And don't wait weeks or months to try and do the evaluation. Grab a hold of it when it's fresh in people's minds, when you're with the people, or when they're very, very fresh in their minds and they're working with that information. And use those self-documenting approaches. People like to talk about themselves. People like to talk about what they've done and learned. And that's an awful lot easier than putting together one of the more scientific studies and asking them these cold questions that they have to go into. And when you do your follow-up, figure out who it is that you're targeting to do the follow-up and why you're targeting them. And that's going to help develop what kinds of information that you're going to get out of it. You can't document everything that you do. You can't do it all at once, so do it a bit at a time. And remember that this program evaluation is an investment. It helps you do better programs in the future. It's not just something you're doing for the program that you're planning for next week. And get in the habit again of making it a part of everything that you do. And once you start doing that, you're going to have better programs, you're going to have better audience results. And this is the end of the presentation, but hopefully it's not the end of you being able to use these kinds of tools to go forward and actually do evaluations and have them fine-tune your